Quite a lot of probability questions relate to spinners. Here's a pretty simple spinner. You could imagine this with a cocktail stick in the middle being spun around, and you're looking at the chance of getting each colour. So the first thing we need to do is decide how many outcomes there are altogether. There are 4 outcomes and they are equally balanced because they're the same size, so they're equally as likely to come up. So if we're looking at the chances of red coming up, because there are 4 outcomes, that becomes our denominator, and red is just one of those, so it's 1/4. So we could give that as 0.25 or 25%. Looking at red or blue, we're actually looking at 2 different segments. Now, the chance of it being red would be 1/4, and the chance of it being blue would be 1/4. So the chance of spinning the spinner and red or blue coming up means that you have to add these probabilities together. 1/4 and 1/4 gives you 2/4, which can be simplified to a half. So that could be 0.5 or 50%. Now that makes sense. If you look at the spinner, you've got a half chance of getting a red or a blue. If you were asked what's the chance of not getting a blue, well, that just means the other 3 segments. So that would be out of the 4 choices, 3 of them, because it could be red or yellow or green. So that could be 0.75 or 75%. Occasionally you get crazy questions like, what's the chance of spinning a purple? Well, there isn't a purple. So quite clearly the answer to that is 0. It's impossible. Sometimes you get slightly more complicated spinners. This one here has been split into 8 equal sections and each one's been given a number. So before we start looking at the chances of each number coming up, let's find out how many outcomes there are altogether. Well, of course, there are 8, so that number becomes your denominator. So the chance of spinning a 1. Out of the 8 chances, there is only 1, which means that the chance is 1/8. As a decimal, that's 0.125, one of those that you need to learn. And as a percentage, it would be 12.5%. It's like half of a quarter. That's why it's 12.5 or 0.125. Now the chance of a 2 is slightly more complicated because of the fact that the 2 comes up twice. So let's keep our 8 on the bottom as there are still 8 outcomes. 2 of them are number 2. So we can simplify that to 1/4 as a decimal, 0.25 or 25%. Now the chance of throwing a 3, again, there are 8 outcomes. Out of those, 4 of them are the number 3, and we can simplify that to 1/2. We know that's 0.5 or 50%. I'm not going to do the chance of a 4 coming up because there's only 1 4, so that's the same outcome as a 1 coming up. It would be 12.5%, 1/8 or 0.125. Sometimes, again, you get those crazy ones. What's the chance of a 5 coming up? Absolutely 0, because a 5 doesn't appear on that spinner. Sometimes you have to combine the outcomes that are there. So if you're asked what's the outcome of an even number coming up, well, this is even, that's even, and that's even. So out of our 8 outcomes, 3 of them are even. If you turn that into a decimal, you would get 0.375 or 37.5%.